Hi and welcome. I'm Mich Bondesio and this is Creating Cadence, a podcast about what it really takes to work well and live well in this fast-paced world we live in. I'm the author of The Cadence Effect, and aside from this podcast, I also write regularly over on Substack. The focus of my work is on reimagining work and business for high-performing founders and teams, creatively minded entrepreneurs, and purpose-driven business owners who want to make a meaningful impact without sacrificing themselves or their people to burnout, hustle, and overwork. This is episode 93, the third of season 15. This season follows a monologue format where I'll be sharing some of the thoughts I'm exploring in my work around burnout and overwork and how it has no place in the future of work. Whether you're listening on your commute, on a walk, or in between tasks, thanks for tuning in. Let's begin. In the last episode, we talked about the myth of more and why deciding what is enough might be the most strategic decision you make this year. Today, I want to zoom out and talk about why burnout keeps happening, not because you're broken, but because the system you're operating in might be. And more than that, I want to talk about the hidden tax you're paying every single day, not in money, but in something far more precious, the quality of your attention. Because here's what I've come to understand through my own experience and through working with founders and creative entrepreneurs. When you've been running on fumes for too long, it's easy to believe that the problem is you. You're too disorganized, you're too slow, not disciplined enough, not resilient enough. That's the story that most of us are told. That's the story we've been programmed to tell ourselves. But I'm here to tell you something different. You're not broken. The system is. So if you're ready, let's dive in. The invisible architecture of overwork. To understand why burnout keeps happening, we need to look at the socio-cultural context behind it. The way most of us work was designed for an economy and culture that no longer exists. Think about it, the 9-to-5 factory model, productivity measured in hours, not impact, always on as a badge of commitment. Now layer on top of that digital platforms engineered for distraction, a global economy rewarding speed over sustainability, and leadership cultures that equate worth with constant output. The system is not set up for you to thrive. It's set up for you to keep producing, to keep making, to keep scaling, no matter the cost. And this affects everyone, but it hits founders, mission-led professionals, and people who do creative thinking for a living particularly hard. If you're leading a startup, you've been told that scaling fast is survival. If you're running a mission-led business, you've been told that serving others means self-sacrifice. If you're a creative thinker, you've been led to believe that the deadline comes first, irrespective of how it might constrain your creative output. These mindsets erode our ability to work well over the long term, and they're reinforced by a system that frames burnout as a personal failing, rather than the inevitable outcome of unsustainable expectations, cultures, and work protocols. So what happens when you think it's you? Here's the dangerous part. When you believe the problem is you double down. You work harder, sleep less, try more tools, hire more, and/or cut back on the things that make you human. It's a losing game because the rules aren't designed for you to win. I know this because I've lived it. Even after I'd founded Creating Cadence, even after I'd written extensively about the importance of sustainable rhythms and delivered countless talks and workshops on the topic, I still found myself falling into old patterns. When I decided to write and self-publish my book, The Cadence Effect, in 2023, I approached it with the intensity of a perfectionist. I poured everything into my writing. My blood, heart, and soul went into every page because I knew that this information needed to reach people I couldn't physically get to. What I didn't realize was that writing the book was only the beginning. Marketing and promoting a book is essentially running another business in itself alongside your day job. But I'd spent all my energy on the first act and arrived at the second completely depleted. There I was advocating for sustainable working practices while burning myself out on my own creative project that advocated for sustainable working practices. Yes, the irony wasn't lost on me. But then I realized I was still learning to pace myself, still discovering that knowing something intellectually and putting it into practice in one part of your life or work are very different things from living it consistently across all facets of your life. This is the work we're all doing, learning to practice and implement, slowly, consistently, and repeatedly, in small steps over time. Which brings me to the hidden tax of hustle. Let's talk about what this constant hustle is actually costing you. There's a founder I know who'd achieved a big milestone in their business. On social media, the celebration posts tell one story: funding secured, team growing, customers converting. But a conversation over coffee tells another. I'm working harder than ever, they said, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm losing my grip on what actually matters. Sound familiar? This founder isn't alone. Neither is the creative studio owner who built her business around purposeful work, but finds herself drowning in the very mission that once energized her. Or the executive who climbs into bed each night with a buzzing mind holding him back from sleep, replaying the dozen half-finished conversations that will demand attention tomorrow. They're all paying what I call the hidden hustle tax. It's a levy not paid in cash, but in something far more precious, the quality of our attention. Focus leakage isn't a productivity problem, it's an attention crisis. It's a cumulative loss of cognitive energy that happens when our brains are spread too thin across too many surfaces. It's decision fatigue wearing down our judgment. It's context switching fragmenting our days into unusable pieces. It's the constant hum of notifications training our mind to expect interruption. In my book, The Cadence Effect, I wrote about how chasing balance sets us up to fail because it implies a static state where everything is held perfectly still. But life and work are always moving. What we need instead is a cadence, rhythms that flex and adapt while protecting our most valuable resources, which are our health and our attention. Without cadence, focus doesn't just leak, it hemorrhages. And there's research to back up the consequences. The research tells us just how costly this bleeding becomes. Gloria Mark's work at the University Center of Irvine found that knowledge workers spend 2.5 hours every day simply recovering from interruptions and task switches. That's 2.5 hours every day. That's more than a full working day lost every week, often without our conscious awareness. For leaders in particular, this isn't just about delayed emails or pushed-back meetings. Those lost hours represent diluted decisions, diminished creativity, and derailed strategic thinking, the very capacities that define effective leadership. Focus leakage is insidious because it can masquerade as productivity. The screen glows, the calendar fills, notifications flow. But the substance, the deep, meaningful work that actually moves the needle, slips away like water through loosely cupped hands. This is when every decision costs you twice. Let me tell you more about decision fatigue. Every choice we make extracts a toll from our mental reserves. For leaders, this burden multiplies exponentially. Should we pivot the product roadmap? Which candidate deserves the final interview? How do we respond to that investor's pointed question about burn rate? What do we do about the team member who's clearly struggling? And that's just decisions at work. The sheer volume of decisions can become overwhelming. Decision fatigue has been studied for decades, and the findings are sobering. In one landmark study, judges making parole decisions were significantly more likely to deny parole later in the day when their cognitive resources were depleted. After breaks or the next morning, when their decision-making energy was restored, the likelihood of granting parole jumped back up. The same is true no matter what job you have. The quality of our choices aren't just about information or experience, it's about energy. I see this pattern repeatedly in the leaders I work with. After days stacked with back-to-back decisions, they default to safe options, postponing bold moves, greenlighting initiatives that don't quite align with their vision, or saying yes when they mean no, not because they lack good judgment, but because their decision-making reserves are running on empty. Unchecked, this fatigue drives leaders into reactive mode. So instead of designing the future, they're firefighting the present. Over time, it erodes not just their effectiveness, but their confidence in their own judgment. Which brings me to digital whiplash. If decision fatigue drains us slowly, then context switching cuts with surgical precision. Modern leadership can feel like conducting an orchestra where every musician is playing a different song. A Slack notification here, an urgent email there, a quick check of the analytics dashboard. It may feel like we're multitasking like a pro, but our brains aren't wired for this constant switching, and each time we switch, it leaves behind a residue. Research shows it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully refocus after an interruption. Multiply that across a typical day of digital distractions, and we lose hours without even registering the theft. The adrenaline of constant activity can feel productive, even heroic, but context switching systematically degrades the very capabilities that leaders depend on, those of clarity, focus, and creative problem solving. One tech founder described their days as toggling between investor presentations, product strategy, and team management, never getting deep enough into any one activity to actually think clearly about what was truly needed. A creative agency owner painted a similar picture of her frustration. I'm bouncing between client work, business development, and operational fires, ending each day feeling busy, but somehow unaccomplished, with a massive to-do list waiting for tomorrow. And then I go home to my family and have to somehow hold space for them too when I'm totally mentally exhausted. The real cost isn't the lost time. It's the slow erosion of strategic capacity. Strategic capacity is the ability to think deeply, connect disparate ideas, and lead with vision rather than reaction. And too much on our plate erodes our strategic capacity. This is aggravated by the trap of always being on. Hustle culture has created an interruption economy. This is a system where constant availability is mistaken for commitment, and busyness becomes a status symbol. On average, knowledge workers check email every 6 minutes. Many respond to messages within seconds, even after hours, creating an always-on dynamic that dissolves the boundaries between work and recovery. Some startup environments have embraced versions of China's infamous 996 culture. That's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. This currently seems to be particularly prevalent with founders working in AI startups, who treat exhaustion and sleeping under their desks as proof of dedication. The outcome of all of these hustle tactics is what researchers now term the infinite workday. There are no boundaries, no off switch, no space for the kind of thinking that actually drives breakthroughs. What they don't seem to realize is that over the long term, this isn't sustainable. Even if their startup idea doesn't fail in the short term, the physiological damage inflicted by this way of working means that their bodies will later on. Digital presenteeism is leaving founders and teams chronically exhausted and quietly burning out. The irony is stark. In trying to show commitment, they're undermining the very cognitive resources that make their commitment valuable and resilient. One creative entrepreneur told me, I found myself replying to client messages at midnight, not because it was urgent, but because I was afraid of seeming unavailable. A startup CEO described a similar pressure. I felt like I needed to be instantly responsive to my investors and team, but all that availability was making me less capable of the big picture thinking that they actually needed from me. Both were reinforcing the culture of interruptions and paying for it with their inability to focus. To avoid attention leakage, we need to set better boundaries, not just for the sake of our productivity, but also for our health and well-being. This is about finding your signal in the noise. And here's a helpful reminder. What gets measured gets managed. If attention is our most valuable resource, we first need a way to track how we're using it. Let's call this our attention ratio. It's the ratio of deep, high-value work hours to total logged work hours. For the maths geeks here, if you work 50 to 60 hours a week, but only 10 to 12% are spent in uninterrupted high-focus flow, your attention ratio is 20%. It doesn't matter how packed your calendar is or how many emails you've sent. If your yield is low, you risk eroding your leadership edge. Unlike traditional productivity metrics like tasks completed, hours billed, or meetings attended, your attention ratio captures the quality of your attention. It illuminates a leakage and offers a concrete benchmark for improvement. In my book and on my podcast, I've emphasized treating attention like capital. Attention is a valuable asset, something to be allocated, protected, and invested for maximum return. Think about it. Would you accept a 20% return on your financial investments when, with some careful planning, you can get a higher return? So why accept a lower ratio of return on your attention? So let's look at some practices that you can use to help reclaim your focus. Improving your attention ratio doesn't require a complete overhaul. Small, consistent shifts will compound into meaningful gains. In simple speak, pick one small thing to support your attention. And here are 4 evidence-based approaches to get you started. First, meeting budgets. Cap your total meeting hours per week and fiercely protect focus blocks. One founder I worked with reduced their meeting load from 35 hours to 20 hours per week simply by asking, does this need to be a meeting or can it be an async update? Second, decision batching. Save low-stakes choices for designated windows. Leaders can apply this principle to scheduling, communications, or routine approvals, or even what they choose to wear every day. Steve Jobs wore identical outfits to preserve decision energy for what mattered. Third, deep work sprints. Block 90 minutes to 2-hour windows daily for uninterrupted focus. The key here isn't duration, it's protection. Treat these blocks like non-negotiable appointments with your most important thinking. And during this time, ditch notifications and your phone. Hide it from yourself if you have to. Fourth, recovery rituals. Strategic breaks improve both energy and cognitive performance, so build micro breaks and reset practices into your day. For example, changing your environment by taking a 2-minute loop around the block, your office space, or your living room. Or introduce conscious breathing. The physiological sigh, which is 2 inhales through the nose and 1 long exhale through the mouth, can reduce stress and restore attention in under 30 seconds. Personally, I prefer taking a long, slow inhale and a long, slow exhale 3 times in a row for a quick shift in attention. But consciously slowing your breathing in any way changes your state for the better, so pick your preference and breathe. Together, these 4 approaches can help you reclaim 5 to 10 hours of meaningful focus every month without adding more work to your plate. So let's recap what we've covered today. Most important, if you're feeling the strain, you're not broken, the system is. The way most of us work was designed for an economy and workplace culture that no longer exists, and it's costing us the quality of our attention. Hustle culture sells the illusion of progress while silently bleeding the resource that we can least afford to lose, our capacity for clear, creative decision-making. But there's another path forward. Just as companies meticulously track cash burn, leaders can monitor their focus burn. By measuring and improving our attention ratio, we can reclaim our most valuable asset, which is our depth of attention. This isn't about working less, it's about working with intention. It's about recognizing that sustainable leadership, which includes self-leadership, requires protecting the cognitive resources that make leadership possible in the first place. The hidden tax of hustle may be real, but it's not mandatory. By shifting from reactive busyness to intentional cadence, we can build the spaciousness needed for maintaining our strategic capacity, so we can do the work that actually matters. So here's your challenge. Audit your own attention ratio this week. Track how many hours are truly deep and focused. Where are you doing high-value work versus how many hours are fragmented, distracted, or reactive? Notice where attention leaks. Then choose one of those 4 simple practices to help patch that leak. Because the choice between hustle and cadence isn't just about productivity, it's about the quality of leadership that we bring to the work that matters most. Changing the system starts at the micro level. It's about how you operate within it. You don't have to play by the rules that were never meant for you. You can challenge outdated approaches, discover smarter, healthier ways to thrive in a fast-paced world, and make a success of your business, all without selling your soul. Yes, it takes courage to go against the flow, but it can be done. And the more of us who do it, the bigger the movement grows, which creates the groundswell for systems change. In the next episode, we'll explore why burnout should be treated as a board-level risk and not a personal failing. Until then, I invite you to measure your attention ratio and start reclaiming your focus. You might be surprised by what you discover. So thanks for listening. I'll be back soon with the next episode in the series, but a few quick notes before you go. If you found this episode helpful, please like or rate the podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps others to find us. You'll find out more about my work at creatingcadence.co, and you can grab a copy of my book via thecadenceeffect.com. You can also read more of my articles on creatingcadence.substack.com. The Creating Cadence podcast is produced by Bondesio Media and is available on Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube. It's edited on Descript, and this season's music is from Changing Their Minds on Premium Beat. So until next time, keep moving forwards with courage, curiosity, and cadence. Bye for now.